Hey everyone, Nathan from Black Belt MTG. I'm here with 3 winning zoo decks from this past weekend. So we had a big weekend with a lot of different Magic tournaments going on, and I'm going to go over a few of the results. We've got some results from the NRG series in Minnesota, large modern tournament with 181 players, and then we also have some results from just the typical MTGO modern challenge that happened this weekend. So we had a few different zoo builds putting up very strong results, including the actually first place finish for the modern challenge this weekend, which I'll get to with the third deck. But first, we're going to take a look at these NRG series decks. So there were actually 2 domain zoo builds that finished in the top 8 of this event. It was a 181 person modern event. The first one is Tyler Novak finished 7th overall with this domain zoo build. So looking at what he's doing, he starts out with kind of the typical shell I've seen a lot with the more aggressive variants. It's also what I play mostly. So he's got his Stubborn Denial, Lightning Bolt, Monkey, Ragavan, McCarroll. He does have a split of 3 Neshoba Brawlers and 2 Tarmogoyfs. He is playing sort of in the flex slots. He does have 1 Invasion of Tarkir, so that can act as a 2 damage burn spell. And then, if you can flip it to do a lot of cool things, he can pump Scion, could cause Scion to do extra damage, gives you another threat. So it could be a card that's good in grindy matchups. I haven't gotten a chance to play it that much, but it is definitely something that I've seen some other players try out. So he's got that as a 1-of. And then his mana base is actually a little different. So he is actually on 22 lands, and he's playing a Boseiju instead. I prefer to play an extra fetch, but he is playing Boseiju here. It's just another out for Blood Moon in the main deck. And then looking at sideboard, I see a lot of the typical sideboard cards that I think are pretty strong that I like to play. So Terra Sunder, Chain to the Rocks. He does have the 1-of Hallowed Moonlight. I think that's maybe just a nice extra card against Rhinos, maybe against Creativity, things like that. He's got his Flusterstorms, Veil of Summer, and then his Sweepers along with Wear Terror. Again, I've kind of talked about how I usually prefer Natural State to Wear Terror, but Wear Terror can also be good. And he does have 2 Chalice of the Void, which is interesting because usually we would think for the Creativity matchup, or sorry, not Creativity, for the Cascade matchup, normally I would just bring in more permission. Like you might see some bring in Remand, bring in Minor Misstep, bring in Teferis, but he went in for the Chalices. It is nice to be able to stay on curve with Chalice, so maybe that was one of the reasons he did that. But yeah, so he, like I said, had a very great results with this kind of split of Brawler and Tarmogoyf. So that's definitely something that I've seen before, and it's probably Tarmogoyf gets made even better when you have the opportunity to put like battles in the graveyard and things like that. It's just another card type to pump Goyf some more. Okay, for the second list, I've got John McCarroll, who finished at that same energy event, 180 plus players. He finished 5th overall with Domain Zoo. So looking at his main deck, again, we see a similar kind of shell. So I'll just highlight where we see some differences compared to the previous list or list that I've run. So he is running 3 Ren and 6, which is interesting. So that will help to solidify your land drops. Sometimes it can. I haven't been as huge of a fan of Ren 6 in these kind of shells because he's a little more mid-rangey, but it can be good to hit those land drops. And that also enables him to play some of these utility lands in a way that maybe he normally wouldn't. So it makes things like Boseiju much stronger. He is also playing a Ganju, Seed of the Empire. So he's got some utility lands. He's also got 1 Tranquil Thicket. So this is just another land that enables him to get the cycling kind of loop with Ren 6. So if you see like grindy matchups, then he can basically discard, draw a card every turn with Ren 6 with Tranquil Thicket. So and he also of course has like Triumphs do that as well. So it's definitely an interesting mana base. Usually I would think that with the domain mana base, I feel like it's already pretty tight with the number of types that you want, that playing these utility lands can be a little iffy, but maybe with Ren 6 solidifying your land drops enough, then it's possible. He's got 1 Remand main deck. That's a card I've seen in flex slots. Also 1 Dramoka's Command. I think those are great choices for this sort of flex slots depending on what meta you're expecting. And he did trim on 2 Nakaddles to fit his extra Ren and 6s. And then looking at sideboard, he's got an interesting kind of different sideboard than what I would normally play. So he is playing Gigantha, but it looks like a lot of he really wanted to lean in on the sort of free spells for sideboard. Post-sideboard game. So he's got Force of Vigor and Endurance. So most likely, game 2 and 3, if he needs those cards, obviously he's not going to declare Gigantha as his companion. But it's an interesting move. I do usually like Gigantha a lot, but I can also understand like Force of Vigor can be very strong against like Amulet Titan, like Hammer Time, like decks where you're trying to just disrupt their combo. And maybe in those matchups, Gigantha just doesn't matter as much because they're not going to be long games. Perhaps similar with Endurance. So he's not playing Rest in Peace as Graveyard Hate or anything like that. He's just got Endurance. And he is playing 2 Orvar, which I also think is kind of an interesting choice, but maybe he's just looking for playing... Yeah, so normally I would say that, since our deck does have access to blue permission, then playing... I usually prefer to play like Flusterstorm if you're worried about the creativity matchup, but Orvar is also a fine choice if you need it, but yeah, and he's got 2 Teferi again. It's probably just he was expecting a lot of Cascade decks and things like that. So definitely some interesting choices in the mana base, and definitely seems like a cool build if you want to try to incorporate Red and 6 and get some of these kind of utility lands. It's a very interesting take, and like I said, he got great results at the 5th place in the tournament. Moving on to our 3rd deck here, last but not least, we have Mr. T 1980, who won the MTGO Modern Challenge this weekend. He finished 1st place, and he was playing Domain Zoo. So taking a look at this list is probably going to be the most similar to a list I played. Again, a lot of this is based off of the mana base and everything. I know Mr. T is in the Discord as well, so his mana base is the same one that I've played for with 21 lands. Looking at what he has in the flex slots, we see he's got he's trimmed on the 4th and Shoba Brawler to kind of free up another slot, and so he's going with 1 Dromoka's Command, which again I think is a great card if you're expecting a lot of sort of Urza Saga matchups. It's very good against Urza Saga. I've seen anything where you need to like destroy enchantments. It can really flip the game. It can really honestly like win the game against certain decks. So very good against Urza Saga decks, very good against Murktide as well. Things like that. So definitely a great choice there. And then he's got 2 battles. So he's also, as we saw before, playing Invasion of Tarkir, which we had one of their players playing it. He's playing it as a 2 of here. And again, it can work kind of as like, you can think of it maybe similar to effect of like a Bone Crusher Giant, where you pay 2 mana to do 2 damage, and you have the option later to flip it when you want. So it's kind of can be very good in these like grindy matchups, games that go long, where it's like, hey, maybe you want to flip this to get the creature, and then the creature synergizes well with Scion and things like that. So again, there's the battles are definitely interesting. There's definitely a lot more decision points with them. It's very matchup dependent on like, hey, should I attack a battle? Should I attack the player? Like things like that. He also does have the 1 of Miglos Maze Crusher. Again, this is a card I've played a lot in Zoo. I think it's great, really great as an out to Blood Moon. Good as just kind of a mana sink late in the game. Again, very good in those kind of mid-range matchups where games can go long. And then looking at the sideboard, this is going to be very similar again to the sideboard I've used and a lot of players have used. So he does have the 1 of Veil of Summer, and he has the 1 of Teferi, and then the rest is kind of stock for what I've been doing in my sideboard for a long time. So definitely this is Mr. T's a guy who's just been grinding a lot of challenges with this list, and he has had a lot of success before. He had some other top 8 finishes earlier, but now he finally got the challenge win. It's nice to see like a kind of classic list. I mean, sure, he's tweaked a few of the flex slots a little bit, but it's nice to see these kind of lists still doing well in today's meta. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this kind of content, and you can subscribe if you like this sort of stuff. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.